G'day and Kaya, and welcome to the Australians Teach English podcast. Ooh, there we go. Whoops. Actually, I'll do that again. 3, 2, 1. G'day and Kaya, and welcome to the Australians Teach English podcast, the podcast by language learners with language learners for language learners. My name is Glenn, and I'm the owner of Australians Teach English. And if you like this podcast, you can contribute to us on our Patreon at patreon.com/Australians Teach English. And you can have input onto what gets created, videos, explainers, and anything else related to Australian English. And on today's show, I have someone that is good value. She's a real personality, a real card. And if you have seen her on social media, you will realize what I am talking about. Full of energy, full of great advice, and just a decent Sheila, a really good Sheila, absolutely good value. So welcome to the show, Cami.
Thank you so much, Glenn. Thank you so much for inviting me. I'm now just sensing that we are gonna have like such a great time.
I hope. Well, absolutely, because you are good value. Absolutely, it's one of the reasons why I wanted you on the show for so long, because you are such an energetic and vibrant personality. So, Cami, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, I'm Cami. Like most of you guys probably follow me on social media as CamienAustralia. So, well, I'm someone that came to Australia in 2018, in April 2018. And I don't know, I'm someone that came to Australia with the idea of, I don't know, finding new opportunities, kind of trying to reinvent myself. Um, and I don't know, get surprised about what really Australia was gonna give me.
Yeah, and so you came here on a working holiday visa, and you are still here 5 years later. So I'm assuming you're not still here on a working holiday visa. Well, you shouldn't be.
Yeah, that's correct.
Otherwise, we're going to be in trouble
That's
here.
correct.
So how is it that you're still here in Australia?
Well, as you said, I came with a working holiday visa that I make it last for 2 years because like when you have a working holiday for 1 year, but you can extend those visas for either one more year or even like 3 years. But well, we are not going to get into rules, but I could manage to extend for an extra year. And after that, I got into like a student visa for 2 years. And now my partner got a sponsor by a company. So I'm kind of added to his visa as a partner. So that's how we're still managing to stay in Australia.
Okay, I was under the assumption that your partner was actually from Australia.
Everyone said the same. I know that he looks like well he's English.
Well,
So because he
yeah.
speaks English and we are in Australia, everyone assumed that he is someone from Australia. But literally we are in the same path at the moment. I mean, like as I want to stay here, he want to stay here too, and we need to kind of deal with the same odds just to try to get into maybe permanent residency as a first step, and then
Yeah.
citizenship.
Okay. And so it's not just that you're actually here on a partner visa or whatever. You are actually working here at the same time as well. Is that correct? What is your work at the moment?
At the moment, I'm working on a vet clinic. So I'm working as a vet nurse, and I have been in this clinic for the past 2 years and a half. And it have been very intense, I guess, because as I told you in the beginning, I came to Australia and well, before Australia I was in New Zealand, but that is another story because I have been overseas like 8 years. But like the idea of leaving my country, my life over there, it was to kind of start again, try to find a new path. Back home, I studied to be a veterinarian, but as soon as I finished, I didn't want it to be a vet really. So I built up most of my experience as a kind of in the environmental consultancy world. And then, yeah, so I never thought that I was going to be like working in the vet field again. So then here we are, coming back to my first steps in life, I guess, and then starting all over again.
Yeah, and it sounds like you have an absolutely fantastic time in your workplace as well. I imagine it's not just yourself that is good value in this workplace. I'm sure you would say that your workmates are also good value. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. Like, I just love every single person over there. They are absolutely amazing. And since I started to be at that place, um, at the beginning, I was scared because, as I told you before, I didn't develop my skills as a vet. Kind of, uh, yeah, I didn't develop those skills, so I was afraid to just step into this kind of challenge. So they put a lot of trust in my kind of the previous studies that I had, and they noticed that I was willing to learn and just take a I don't know, just dive into this. So yeah, they let me do like absolutely everything. They offer like training and stuff like that, but like in I was like pretty much learning as you go, as the day comes, pretty much. So it's been interesting. It's been very interesting.
Yeah, and recently it's actually probably what got me back in contact with you to make sure that we actually had this show was that recently in your workplace, and you were really 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 surprised by this, was a Christmas in July celebrations.
Yeah.
So I was I always watch your social media stuff because it's very interesting, but it did strike me as a bit strange how the Christmas in July stuff wasn't. I just assumed that was sort of like a kind of a worldwide thing, but apparently not, because you had never heard of it before, and the people that follow you also had never heard of this before, and were very very curious about this whole Christmas in
Mm-hmm.
July thing in Australia. So can
Mm-hmm.
you tell the listeners about this, because it might be quite instructive for them as well.
Yeah, so even though I have been 8 years overseas, New Zealand and then Australia, this is kind of like the first year that I'm kind of like part of a celebration. I heard about this before, and always like knowing that it was like related to maybe like some immigrants from the UK or from like these places where they spend Christmas in the colder time. And
Uh,
then they are trying to celebrate like Christmas in July here because, well, it's winter for us here in Australia. So they are trying to, I don't know, feel like at home and just maybe try to enjoy like a hot chocolate with marshmallows. And
like, yeah, I mean, this was the interesting thing when I was in Argentina and having Christmas in Argentina, and everyone was like, oh, it doesn't feel right having Christmas in the middle of summer. And I was thinking, what the hell are you talking about? Like, this is this is normal for me. But people obviously coming to Australia or going to South America from other places in the world where it is cold during Christmas, certainly they
Mhm.
feel a little bit left out, and probably they get a little bit confused, that yeah, it is getting cold and whatever, but there is no Christmas. So they've decided to actually make Christmas out of it in
Yes,
July.
exactly. Because, for example, I started to hear this because of well, my boyfriend that is from England. Yeah, every time that I was talking to him like about my Christmas in Chile, he was, oh, but it's so weird that it's in summer. And now that we are in New Zealand, because we met in New Zealand, he was saying, I'm going to spend my first Christmas on summer. That's so weird. I'm not gonna be able to like wear like a Christmas jumper. I'm not gonna be able to like maybe enjoy the kind of having a roast dinner with the cold surrounding us. It's gonna be so weird. And I was like, well, yeah, that I was like, I have never ever experienced like a winter
a
kind
winter
of
Christmas.
Christmas.
Yeah,
So I was like, I
exactly.
can't understand what
Yeah,
you're saying to me. Like, I mean,
exactly.
I spent like Christmas in summer in Chile, Christmas in summer in New Zealand, now Australia. So
Mm.
I don't know, sometime I will have the chance, maybe if we go to Canada or England, or I don't know, we'll see.
So you came here to Australia, and you're now living in Sydney, but you did travel around on your working holiday visa. So where are some of the different places that you've been, and what are some of the things that you've done?
So I travel most of the kind of East Coast, I guess, because as soon as I arrived to Sydney, then I needed to do my extension for my working holiday visa as soon as possible. So after 5 days in Sydney, we flew to Cairns. So we had the chance to see a little bit of Cairns, but like very quickly, I got a job that took me uh, to the middle of the desert in Winton. That is like a very, it's like every time that I just mentioned this, like, yeah, other kind of people from South America that I know, they are like, but Winton, where is Winton? Or even like people from Australia, because that is something that surprised me, that a
Winton,
lot of
yeah,
Australians, they don't
Winton
know.
is in Whoop Whoop, in the outback, middle of nowhere,
In the world.
and in Whoop Whoop, yeah, and probably really it's famous in Australia because it's one of the few places in Australia that you can actually find fossils, and in particular dinosaur fossils. So I think actually you can correct me if I'm wrong because I've never been there, but there must be a museum for dinosaur fossils out in Winton. Is that correct?
Yeah, the museum for the fossils though is like not in Winton itself. It's like because there is like maybe how many hours? Let's say, because I can't remember well, but it was like around 3 hours from Winton. There is like a museum where
Winton
you
is just the
have like.
closest place to this. It's not actually close. It's just the closest place to the fossils.
Exactly, because Winton is very tiny and it's literally
Mm.
like 5 blocks per 5 blocks. So like
Mm-hmm.
you have a museum over there, but it's more like a museum for the town. And it's well known also because of what is it? The guy that was inventing the song Waltzing Matilda, is something Patterson. I don't
Banjo
know if
Patterson.
you heard of it.
Mm.
Banjo Patterson. So yeah, it's pretty much like they have a museum with the history of the town surrounding, and about also this character for Australia. But like 3 hours from this town is a museum that hold like a dinosaur stampede or something. So there's like a lot of like footprints of
Footprints,
dinosaurs
yeah.
in the floor.
Mm-hmm.
Footprints, sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of footprints over there. So that is pretty much it. But it's like a whole journey to get there. So when we went in like a tour that they took us for free, actually was so great, because locals, they treat us like very well when we were there. They wanted to spoiling us like all the time, because they had kind of pretty much foreigners like working for them.
Mm-hmm.
So they wanted to show us all the beauty that the outback can
Mm.
kind of have, right? So they invite us for free to this tour. Um, and yeah, we had the chance to do a few stops in places within the outback, and it was like breathtaking, because it's so vast. It's but
Yeah.
beautiful at the same time.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the interior of Australia in the outback, and wherever you go, places like Winton or the Red Centre or wherever, even parts of the top end, like, yeah, it's different from being far away from everything. Even like in Chile or Argentina, these places which are quite big, yeah, still not really quite the same as being sort of in the middle of nowhere in Australia. Yeah, it is a very different
Mm-hmm.
experience. Very different experience. So out of all the
Yeah,
places that you've been to in Australia,
it's very isolated.
yeah, isolating, absolutely,
Sorry.
absolutely.
Yeah,
And
you
so
feel
out
very
of all,
isolated.
yeah,
Isolated.
so out of all the places that you've been to in Australia,
I,
what's your favorite so far?
oh, I really liked Fraser Island. Have
Did
you
you
been
get?
there
No, I've
or
never
heard
been
about it?
there. It's recently changed its name back to its indigenous name. I can't remember what it's called now. Kwai
Yeah, I
or
can't
something
remember
like that.
either, but
Yeah,
it's
it's
like
had its
yeah,
name
it's with
changed.
hate or something.
Yeah, and
Haraki. Yeah, I can't remember.
and it's also been famous because backpackers have been getting attacked by dingoes. So you didn't get so you didn't so you didn't get attacked by dingoes when you went to Fraser Island, did you?
Oh, no, but I was very scared because like the tour that we took, it was to stay on tents for like overnight. So the guy told us, well, literally gave us like a stick to have with us in the tent, just in case we wanted to go for toilet during the night, and a dingo was like around or something. And
Mm.
literally, when I went for toilet during the night, I just opened the tent, and the first thing that I light with my torch, it was a dingo outside.
Oh
So I didn't know
no.
what to do. Like, whoops, back
It
to the
just
tent. And then I was like, okay, I stayed there for like a few more minutes. I started to make some noise inside of my tent to just scare him off. And then I went through.
that's exactly what you want when you're camping in the middle of the night. You get out of your tent and seeing as a dingo right there. That's exactly what you want. Exactly what you want. So
Yeah.
unfortunately, yeah, these incidents are happening because basically the dingoes come looking for food, really, and also because people are
Yeah.
giving them food, then that has created quite a bit of a problem on Fraser
Yeah,
Island
they became
specifically.
barriers, really.
Mm,
Mm.
yeah.
Yeah.
So
It's
which
kind
is
of sad because
mm,
yeah, it's kind of sad because yeah, like they're wild animals, right? And
mm,
then if people is like giving them food, they get kind of like domesticated, and
mm,
then people itself put in danger as the animals are in danger too. So
absolutely.
yeah, it's kind of like a hard thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Which is interesting because now that you're working back in the veterinary space, you're telling me before your favorite animals are actually dogs. And so
Yeah.
te, can you maybe you can tell the listeners what is the difference between a dingo and a dog?
And a dog. Um, well, both of them are canines, so they kind of came from the same family, but dingoes are kind of a wild dog that they have here in Australia. So it's like a native dog, let's say, that kind of grew up in wildlife. So it's pretty much that.
So
It's not
basically,
something that you can have as a pet at home.
no, no. Although in certain parts of Australia, they're kind of yeah, they can be treated as pets, kind of. Yeah, people like
Mm-hmm.
having dingoes around them for various reasons, but it's not necessarily a particularly healthy relationship between humans and animals. But in Australia, they are basically
Mm-hmm.
the apex predators. We don't have large carnivores in Australia. All of our apex predators are generally eagles or hawks. So the dingoes
Mm-hmm.
take up that niche in the environment. So
Exactly.
now that you're working back in the veterinary space, are you encountering any Australian animals, looking after any Australian animals at all?
Sometimes we get kind of injured birds into the clinic. So yeah, we have sometimes the cockatoos or sort of like those native pigeons. What else? Crows and
Mm-hmm.
lorikeets, rainbow lorikeets,
Lorikeets,
loads of
yeah,
them.
yeah.
Yeah,
And you were telling me before that you really, really don't like cockatoos. Is that true?
yeah, that's true. That's true.
Why?
I don't like them
My friend my
because
friend
even
my
though they
friend
are
Todd wants to know
beautiful,
why.
look tall, you look cute. But you're really noisy. Like you scream at everything, and yeah, it wakes me up very early in the morning. It don't leave me in peace really in the afternoon. So yeah, that's why I don't like them. Uh, but the other ones that we have, they are also very problematic. Are the magpies? Do you have any magpie encounters?
Oh, yeah. Well, like I've always had really good luck with magpies. So um I've never been swooped by a magpie.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I don't know what that means, but no, I've never had problems with magpies at all. But
All right. Yeah, it's just because like
backpackers seem to
around,
have enormous problems with magpies.
yeah, it's just like usually like especially if you are like going on a walk and they are on kind of in the nesting times, they go and attack people just to try to defend their nest or
Mm,
just to mark territory. So like it's so funny because sometimes you see like people riding their bicycles and then with helmets with spikes,
yeah.
and even though they are just using all the armory to just try to push them away, they are just so brave. They go to you. They don't care about anything.
Mm. And we're coming up to that time of the year where, well, this is when magpies do generally swoop, is the end of winter, and throughout spring. So yeah, look
Mm,
out for this. But I do find it funny that, people when they come to Australia, they're very worried about sharks and crocodiles and whatnot. And then they realize that once they get here, actually, that's not really a big problem. But but instead they get attacked from the air, from the sky, and no one actually told them about this, that this is actually the biggest
exactly.
biggest danger. So
Or for the cockroaches, if you
was
live
that
in the
something that surprised you when you came to Australia, that you started getting attacked from the sky?
yeah, and actually talking about the sky, do you have any cockroaches that are flying towards you like during?
Flying cockroaches. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's been a while actually. Like in when I was living in Darwin, that was, yeah. I mean, in the tropics, that's kind of bug city, and
Mhm.
like I can remember a couple of times where we had, like, when I was working night shift in a warehouse in Darwin, we had like giant stick insects walk in,
Mhm.
and that was pretty
Okay.
creepy. Yeah, they
Mhm.
just started
Yeah,
walking around. They
I
just started
haven't seen
walking
those,
around the
but
warehouse, and I was thinking, "Holy hell!" And so, yeah, just lots of really big bugs. Yeah, that's kind of
Mhm.
a bit of a theme in most places of
Yeah,
Australia.
that's true.
But
Yeah, when
yeah,
I was in Winton, I had to, well, I experienced some kind of snake encounters. Not crazy though, but just to see one here and then taking photos and then showing to the locals. And locals were like, you, how you got like nearby that one is so poison or venomous. I always confuse those words. And yeah, so I was just like taking photos, like not kind of apparently on an appropriate distance, and everyone was just like saying
yeah,
that I needed to be more careful.
so this is kind of a little bit of a warning. Like, most snakes well, actually, snakes in Australia are pretty venomous. But the ones that, get on all the TV shows, like the desert taipan and all this, like 99.9% of people are never ever going to see one in their life. But
Mm.
actually, out near Winton, that is actually in the zone where some of the most venomous snakes in the world actually live. So,
Exactly.
so I
Yeah, because the
wouldn't.
photo that I took, it was for a brown snake,
Yeah.
and they were babies, and the locals were like, "Ah, but if you get near that, those are even more venomous than the adults itself." And I was like, "Oh my
Oh,
God,
okay.
okay." So
I
I'll
didn't
be
know
more
that.
careful next time. Yeah. But I
Yes.
mean, it's not like that I was like next to them taking the photo, but anyways, like you know what, with the camera, it looks like you're almost like there. So
Yeah.
I was taking some caution, but yeah, I
Yeah.
was taught by
So
by the
brown,
locals to
yeah.
back
So
off.
brown snakes generally have a bad reputation in Australia. So if you see a brown snake, yeah, it's not necessarily good news. Don't
Hmm.
don't get any closer. Um,
Yeah,
but
that's
yeah,
true.
yeah, but yeah. At least it wasn't a desert taipan or anything like this. Probably
Hmm.
and not all snakes are bad, because there's a very famous, a really beautiful snake as well, a red-bellied black snake. Do you know,
Mm-hmm.
have you heard of this snake?
I've heard about colors, but I don't know if you can tell me about the characteristic of this one in particular.
Have you ever seen one?
No, I haven't.
Oh,
Or probably I did, maybe in the zoo, but I'm not sure.
it's really good value, this snake, because it actually eats other snakes,
Mm-hmm.
and it eats the most poisonous snakes and venomous snakes as well. So if you see a black snake, and particularly a red-bellied black snake, it's good news, because they will actually keep you protected from other snakes. They're really good value to
Um,
have
so it
around.
could be your best friend.
They could be
That's the
your
friend that
best
you want
friend.
to have.
Absolutely. So there's an expression: if there's a red-bellied black snake around, you won't have brown snakes, because either they will eat them, or the brown snakes will be too scared to have them around and won't come near. So yeah.
Mm.
So
No, that's interesting to know.
so when you came to Australia, obviously you had a little bit more of knowledge about animals and so on than most people coming to Australia. So what was your impression of the animals here before you came to Australia, and then after you arrived here?
Mm. Well, it was well we had the chance to have cable TV when I grew up. So I was watching a lot of like the Steve Irwin shows.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was very familiar with what kind of animals I was going to find here. Um, so it was kind of um, it was very beautiful to see them kind of in real life, because after seeing everything through the TV, then having them there, I don't know, having a kangaroo like a few meters away from you, or like a koala, or like, I don't know, snakes, or like the birds, whatever. Like the wildlife is impressive here. So just stop seeing through TV and then see them like around you is very breathtaking.
Mm-hmm. So if you could give someone some advice on how to see a kangaroo, what would your advice
Hmm.
be?
Just stay away. I mean, meters
Really,
away,
stay away
and just
from
observe by
kangaroos.
distance.
But what if someone wants to actually go and see a kangaroo? What would be your best advice?
Mm, it's just I'm always like careful with wildlife. Like with wildlife, because you never know how they are going to react towards you. So I don't like to get like very close to them, because especially kangaroos can like start to box to you, or like they have like very big claws, and you can get scratched by them. So you have to be careful. So just by distance is okay. But if you see, I have encounters with wallabies, but that haven't been like, or make me feel that I'm not putting myself in danger. But they are also in areas where they are more like domesticated, let's say,
Mm-hmm.
because it's on a kind of wildlife reserve, or places where people also approach like very often, so they know that people is going to be around them. But if it's like wild, I will keep myself like distant.
Here is one piece of advice that you can give to your followers, is that, and there is a lot of people that when they come to Australia, they want to know, well, I want to see a kangaroo. And so really
Hmm.
the easiest way to see a kangaroo is go to a golf course. You've never been to a golf course in
Hmm.
Australia? And there are
Yeah, I
hundreds,
have been.
thousands of kangaroos, and they won't do
Hmm.
anything. They're so lazy. They won't even look at you. Well, they might look at you and just keep eating and eating while they're lying on the ground. So that would be my advice to anyone that's coming to Australia wanting to find a kangaroo, is just go to a golf course and there'll be heaps
Hmm.
there.
Just I guess it's because it's the areas that I have been kind of living in Australia. I haven't been in the Western Territory, for example. So every time that I go to any golf course, like it will be like in the area surrounding Sydney. So I guess it's because the middle of the city, you don't have like a lot of wildlife to
Mm.
like to enjoy. in kind of in that way. So every like the times that I had like more kind of close encounters was during my trip in the East Coast. So I saw kangaroos like next to the beach in a bay that I can't remember, the Hillsborough or something bay. I don't know, it was a weird name in English, I can't even pronounce it. But yeah, we had like kangaroos in the bay next to the beach, and it was beautiful. We could take like very good photos of them. But then I thought that I was going to see them like in wild, kind of, wildlife. But then, because a lot of tourists goes there, like the people from the campsite that we were staying, they were also kind of hand feeding them. So
Yeah.
of course they were
Yeah,
going
don't
to
do
be
that.
there every
Yeah.
morning. So that kind of was kind of like, oh, that's great, I'm going to see kangaroos. But then was like a kind of like downside at the same time, because then I was like, oh, I thought it was gonna be like a wildlife encounter, and it's not. It's like they are used to be there again, beggars,
Yeah.
beggars,
So
Yeah.
you have a lot of followers and a lot of people interested in what you have to say, because you are good value. So what has been the most surprising thing for your followers to learn about Australia? Or what is the best piece of advice that you've given that people actually say, oh, this is actually the best advice that you've given? Is there anything that sticks in your mind with that?
I guess part of the things that I try to show in my Instagram is like, it's pretty much like my everyday life, right? So I don't have like a script, it's whatever is happening in my days. So there's no marketing around what is life in Australia. It is what it is. It is what is happening to me every time. So I guess the surprise for everyone probably is to understand that even though I'm very far away from I was born, or probably usually they follow me from Chile or from Latin America or whatever. Like if you have problems or if you have struggles, like you have that's very relatable, because it doesn't matter where you are in the world, you are having like the same, you are facing like the same situation. I mean, if you are sad, you are sad no matter what. If you are happy, you're happy no matter what. So probably it's that is like real, it's real life. So I guess that is kind of the surprising thing, that there's no mask. Within this, is not that you are so if you go to Australia and you are like surfing every day, no, man, you're not surfing every day. It's like I'm not in holidays. I'm living my life. I woke up at 5 in the morning, then I go to work and I spend like 10 hours at work. Then I go out with my friends, and then yeah, that's life. I mean, I'm in the other side of the world, but I'm living a life
Yeah,
like everyone else.
I think that probably is really good advice, and that's also something that I try and communicate to people, is that as people from different countries, and especially from Latin America, think of Australia as what we would call like a panacea, like a miracle place of wonder, where there are no struggles and no difficulties and what have you. And that people think that, oh, once I get to Australia, then all my problems will be solved and all the rest. And it doesn't happen like that. There's Australia has its own difficulties, especially as an immigrant or someone, just planning on spending a year or two here. And it's important to keep that in mind, especially at the moment, because finding houses, finding accommodation is super, super, super difficult. And it's stuff like this that people don't actually really consider until they get here. So I think, being able to actually show what daily life is really like in Australia is super important, and not to look at things through rose-colored glasses. So what about
that's kind of the idea. So I try to romanticize the trip.
Yes, that actually give a fair assessment and a fair reflection of what it is actually like living in Australia. And so your English level is is pretty good now, and you've spent what 5 years here or so. So, what is some of your tips and tricks for learning English for people already here or for people thinking of coming here?
Yeah, this is one of the questions that I always get in my Instagram, even though I don't deliver the speech or my messages in English, like I speak in Spanish for my audience. But like my journey through English was pretty much like getting into it. I learned a little bit when I was back home, just through what I was taught in college, but most of my English, I think I learned it through songs because I love to sing and listening to music, and I always like English music, so I was always like learning the lyrics. But it was funny because then when I started to live in New Zealand, then I was starting to sing songs that I was learning when I was a kid, and then I was like, oh, this was the meaning of this, like I was coming up with words that I learned by repetition, but I didn't know the meaning about it. So it was like melody with like words, but with no meaning. So then it was like kind of crazy, then figured what I was singing, or that the emotion that was getting on me just to listen that song. Then suddenly it was like more profound. I don't know how to say it, but it was better.
It is
Better
interesting.
experience
It is
afterwards.
interesting you say this, because when I in one of the places that I was staying, it was sort of like a community place, I guess. It had like its own, rehearsal studio and things for bands and musicians. And there was this choir group that would practice there twice a week, and they sang songs in English. And I thought, oh, great, I'll be able to actually talk to them in English. And they had absolutely no idea what they were singing about. They would sing in English with perfect accents, but then actually I couldn't actually talk to them in English, and they didn't want to talk in English. It was really weird. It was one of the most surprising things that I'd ever encountered, that you can actually learn to sing in a different language that you don't understand. And I really, that was something I'd never, ever, ever considered to be a possibility. So, okay,
Yeah,
so
exactly. Imagine I was once singing like an Alanis Morissette song, and then my boyfriend went into the room and then hear me singing, and then he was like, "Oh, you sound so American," and I was like, "Yeah, of course, because I don't know, she's from like Canada, anyways." But you just learn the music as it is, right? So you copy a little bit of like the accent, the way that she sings and everything. So of course you're gonna sound like different because singing is not the same thing that speaking. So but yeah,
but
it kind
what
of surprised me because it's like that kind of comments you don't expect for.
but was it easy for you to having, that pronunciation practice, that singing using the different words? Do you think it was easier for you to go from that step to then understanding the words that you were saying, rather than having to do it all at once? What do you think about that?
I think it's just it's I never thought about the process really. But let's say when I started to speak English was like the first time that I came to Australia, actually in 2010. I just came for 2 months, and that was like the first time in my entire life that I was surrounded by English speakers. Like getting out of that plane and hearing English, and not only English, it was like listening all the language of all of the world around you, because you have a lot of immigrants anyways, like here. Was like, I don't know, beautiful. And at that moment I knew that Spanish, it wasn't going to be an option for me. So I started to pay a lot of attention, and I love like connecting with people and talking. So I knew that I needed to find a way to just get to communicate with them. So the first time that I was speaking, I was like, my grammar, like, let's say, was terrible. Sometimes I was saying to someone that I was going, do you went for holidays to Peru? They were asking me. Yes, I was like, yeah, I went to Peru, and then I went, but I couldn't say I went to Peru. I
Hmm.
was saying like I go moving my hand backwards. So it's like
Hmm.
I go moving my hand backwards to Peru because I couldn't say like I went. I
Yeah.
didn't know like how to use the verbs, like
Hmm.
conjugations and all that kind of things that you use. But um yeah, just the repetition, a lot of repetition. And I was like writing down, for example, I knew that I needed to go from point A to B and I needed to take the bus. And so I was writing down all the places where I was going through and then like verbalizing what I had on writing to people to practice. Or I was going in the train and the train says to you like, oh, next stop, Sydenham, next stop, Erskineville, and blah, blah. And then, so every time that they were saying that, I was repeating. So I was like trying to get the accent.
Good. Yeah. So this is perhaps one of the things that people don't like to hear when it comes to learning languages, but it's one of the unfortunate truths is that repetition is really, really important. It's boring, and you might not necessarily, well, you can't do it for extended periods because it is boring and it is hard work, but it does actually help, whether or not that's just repetition for pronunciation or repetition when it comes to reading things and actually understanding each
Mm-hmm,
word and actually trying to advance your understanding each time you do something. People underestimate
mm-hmm,
the 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 amount that you do actually have to repeat things before it sinks in, before you get to a level of being able to automatically recognize something or to automatically say and pronounce something correctly. And
exactly.
that is one of the unfortunate truths with language learning. But if you do it with things that you enjoy, for example, with singing or listening to music, then that is sort of one little trick around that, is that you
Mm-hmm.
can actually, do things repetitively that you enjoy at the same time.
Yeah. And with the time, like talking about repetition, it's like the idea that, I don't know, I was like seeing someone and they were asking me about myself. So I was like, yes, I'm Camila, I'm from Chile, and blah, blah. And you say a story to one person, but then you meet another one and they want to know the same thing. So you are pretty much like, your story is like, is getting better and better
Exactly.
because,
And then eventually you get sick of saying
yeah,
it. And so then you've got a couple of options. You can just go, stuff it, I'm not going to say that, or you change it and then you work on something new. And it's kind of like
exactly.
it's an opportunity to actually do that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It's an opportunity to improve. I mean,
Mm,
every day is an opportunity to improve in everything that we do in
mm,
life, pretty much. But especially with a language, I think we have to put on, like, if you want to learn a language, you have to put on your mind, okay, you need to leave behind your bad habits, I guess,
mm.
and your laziness, and say, all right, I'm not in Latin America anymore. I'm not gonna speak in Spanish. I'm living in a new different culture, so I need to like be like a sponge and just get
Yeah.
all the good things that this new place have for me. So
Yep.
set up your mind, and then it will be like you like all the new things that are coming for you are going to kind of be better, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, and so the listeners out here can see why you are such good value to follow on Instagram, because you do give really, really, really good tips like this about just everyday life, English learning, traveling, working, what an average day in Australia is like. So when I said to you good value, your good value, did you understand that expression immediately? Have you heard it before? What was
Uh,
your first immediate emotional reaction to that?
um, it was more like I thought that we were going to speak probably um yeah, about values itself, about the things that define us, uh, and yeah, like what kind of things pretty much gave us like a path in life and show us the good and bad and give us, I don't know, like the priorities.
Interesting.
But, yeah.
Because that's sort of one meaning of the word value. Yeah. And even yesterday, I jokingly said to one of your Instagram stories, because you were talking about saving money in Australia. Is that correct? Well, I can't remember exactly.
Yeah.
What was your tip for saving money yesterday?
I mean, it
remember.
wasn't like a tip, really.
What was
It
it
was
about?
like, it was a story about going to the supermarket, and I wanted to get, well, I bought cheese, right? So I got the package of cheese. I went through the self-serve, and I was just like trying to scan it, and I couldn't scan it. So then I spoke with
So
the
you
person in
stole it.
charge of the self. No, let me finish. So I just spoke with the self-serve guy, whatever that was in charge there. And then I said, look, I'm just trying to scan this product, but it's not coming up. So should I go and pick up another one from the shelf? And he was like, oh, yeah, you're right. It doesn't have a barcode. So no, it's free. What? And for the way that he said, and I was like, for the way that he said it, I thought it was like this guy is being like sarcastic, you know.
But he was being
So
serious.
then I was like insisting. He's like, but are you sure? Like, you're not kidding me? No, no, it's free. It's fine. So I saved $9 because it was for free.
So we would say that guy. What would we call that guy? How would we say? Would we say he was good value? He's good value.
Yeah.
He's good value.
And how would we
Absolutely.
say he is, because he was very fair with my situation. I mean, he literally saved me the pain to go to the shelf and just get the cheese bag or whatever, and then
Absolutely.
he was amazing. He did a very well job.
Yeah, he's good value. So then when the other meaning with value, we've spoken about values in terms of like your personal beliefs, your personal characteristics, whatever. But when we come to value, we can also talk about saving money as well. So, for example, if something is 2 for 1, you buy 2 and you only pay for 1, then that is also value as well in terms of saving money. But when it comes to actually describing someone as good value, it's a little bit different. If I was to describe someone as good value, what would it mean? What would I be actually saying about that person? What do you think?
That maybe it's a person with integrity, someone honest, someone maybe confident, with courage, generous, respectful.
All of these things. And then one more, and then a couple on top of this as well. Funny is probably the other one. Also a good personality in general. And so positive, good. So I can remember a situation, actually, I was doing my English teaching training over in Argentina, and I was talking with a fellow Australian there, and there was an American sitting at the table while we were having a conversation. And my friend Ellen from Australia, she said to me, oh yeah, we were talking about the teacher or whatever. And Ellen said to me, oh yeah, she's really good value. This one, she's great, she's funny, etc., etc. And the Yankee boy, he sat there and he said, excuse me, you called someone good value?
Okay.
And he said, I understand good and I understand value, but how can you call someone good value? Like, you're not buying them. And so we thought, oh, how are we going to explain this? And so we had to, okay. So if someone is like honest, fair, but funny, and also a really interesting personality at the same time, this is what we mean by good value. And so, yes, you are absolutely good value. And I recommend.
It's crazy how expressions from one English speaking country to another one can mean something that different. Because literally he was thinking that yeah, good value. Like, I mean, you pay some money for
Yeah,
that person
exactly.
or something.
Yeah, he
Exactly.
was
So,
thinking of it literally. Yeah. So
mm-hmm. Yeah.
so I have no idea where this expression comes from. I generally don't look at the history of a lot of these expressions. But it
Mm-hmm.
is certainly one that does get actually used when we're describing other people. Yeah, especially when we're talking about our friends. We might be saying to another person, yeah, he's really good value, she's really good value. And my friend Cami, she is certainly good value. And so that's why, especially if you are a Spanish speaker, or even if you're learning to speak Spanish, then I recommend following her on social media, because you do post really, really insightful and interesting and helpful things for people. So
Thank you.
where can they find you? Where can they find you?
Where?
Yeah,
Um, uh, well, do you mean that you want me to give the direction of my social media?
that's
Or
correct. Yeah.
yes, so okay, everyone can find me on Instagram as Cami, CAMINEN, Australia, Australia as it is.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, you can follow me there. I think it's the only kind of social network that I use at the moment. I wanted to get through TikTok and YouTube, but I really don't have time to be in so many platforms at the
Mm-hmm.
same time. And I kind of stick with one because it was like the most comfortable thing for me to do.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and yeah, so you can find me there at the
Very
moment.
good.
I don't
Very
know.
good.
Maybe I'm going
Very
to
good.
start something else later.
I think from my personal experience, I think you would work really well on YouTube, giving longer tutorials, and there certainly are some other people that do that on YouTube, like tips for Spanish speakers coming to Australia, etc., etc. There are quite a few good channels out there. But in terms of,
Hmm.
Instagram especially, yeah, yours is absolutely, tremendous value. It's great value. Yeah, and
Hmm.
it actually gives me some insights into what might be different here in Australia that I haven't actually thought about before. For example, the Christmas in July situation, which is something that I hadn't actually
Yeah.
even thought about before then. So,
Yeah.
speaking of
I
social
think
media, mhm, go for it.
the things about like the social media itself. I think it's being like a nice kind of journey in terms of like connecting with people, not only with people from Latin America, because, well, as I told you, my audience is more like Spanish speakers because I deliver most of my message
Yeah.
in Spanish. But then like playing along with the messages and stuff like that. When I started to add subtitles in English, all my kind of English friends, followers, they were like, "Oh, that's so good! Thank you so much
Mm,
for putting the subtitles because they can really like enjoy a more fully experience, and they are not just seeing or like all the places that I'm just trying to show. They are like also seeing the message behind, which is great. And also, I feel that I had the opportunity to approach part of Australia to Australians.
mm,
I had like a feedback from my friends, from colleagues, say like, "Oh, Cami, you travel more than me. You know Australia more than me," and blah blah blah. Because it's like, yeah, I mean, I like to go and sightseeing different places, and when I have like record of that, then yeah, you give them a little bit of their own country to people that their whole life have been living here, but they never had the
mm.
chance to go there.
Yeah,
So it's
or they
beautiful.
get a different perspective that they hadn't actually seen before, which is really, really, really common. Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah. So speaking of social media
Mm-hmm.
channels and repetition, you can you can go on my YouTube channel now, and there's lots of pronunciation exercises, but there's also some explainers there as well, and also some different exercises and things to follow and learn about Australian English. And so if you want to contribute to the creative process, or you would like something explained, you can go on my Patreon as well at patreon.com/Australians Teach English. But for now, for us here at the Australians Teach English podcast, the podcast by language learners, with language learners, for language learners. It's us saying thank you very much, Cami, and we'll see you next time. Nos vemos. Ciao, ciao.
See you next time. Thank you. Ciao, nos vemos. Thank you so much for inviting me. Had a great
Not a
time.
problem.
For more information about the Australians Teach English Institute, go to australiansteachenglish.com or follow us on Instagram, Facebook and YouTube at Australians Teach English.